If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everybody, welcome back to another 10 underrated commander cards video. Gonna go over some of the Throne of Eldraine cards, seeing as there are a lot of uncommons and maybe some cards that haven't been hyped up that much that I think have some very solid commander playability. Throne of Eldraine is a set that I'm very much interested in because it's heavy on the flavor and it offers you a wide variety of strategies if you're a commander player looking to build a deck. Yes, you might have some more of the same, but this set does offer you some pretty unique mechanics that are going to be really fun to experiment with. But anyway, let's start it off here with the very first card. And I have to remind people, this is not a top 10 list. I don't put it in order of worst to best. Not a lot of people make that mistake, but I think it's worth reminding. These are just 10 cards that I think are pretty underrated. The first card is Heraldic Banner. Now, monocolor is still very fun to play in Commander. It's incredibly easy to build those decks because the land base is pretty lenient. If you're still looking for some budget options, I think Heraldic Banner is going to be pretty good for you. This uncommon 3-mana artifact enters the battlefield and you choose a color. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+0, and it also taps for 1 mana of the chosen color. While a 3-mana mana rock isn't anything special, it does give your creatures +1 if you're playing monocolored and your creatures are the same color. This is already a pretty good strategy in mono white, where you also have a bunch of anthems for your mono white creatures. While I wouldn't just limit it to mono white, you do have other monocolored decks that are looking for a good mana rock that'll provide them with colored mana. The fact that it doesn't just tap for mana though is probably the biggest reason why I'm going to recommend it for you players who are on more of a budget. The next card is Hushbringer. Creatures entering the battlefield or dying don't cause abilities to trigger. This is very important to point out. While I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal in Standard, ETB triggers and death triggers, that is all over the place in Commander. This is something I would recommend over something like a Hushbringer because it does more than just mess with ETBs. I would even argue that death triggers are even more powerful in Commander than ETBs, and we still need more creatures like Hushbringer that are able to shut those decks down. It's not overpowered, but it's cheap enough to throw into a lot of decks as a little bit of utility against those aristocrat themes, blink decks. They're all over the place. The next card is Archon of Absolution. This kind of condition where your opponents can't attack you with their creatures unless they pay mana for those creatures, it's pretty redundant, but there really isn't that redundancy with these Pillow Fort decks because that's all they want. They want more creatures like this, they want more propaganda cards, anything that can prevent your opponents from attacking you. That's exactly what the Pillow Fort decks want. It doesn't have to be thrown into a Pillow Fort deck because you have a really solid creature with protection from one of the best removal colors, but seeing as it's not super expensive, it's a pretty easy to get uncommon. It fits in pretty well with Baird, Steward of Argive, seeing as it's pretty much the same mana and does the same exact thing. Just a powerful thing that white tends to do pretty well. Probably going to be a staple in a lot of those decks that are going to be playing things like Ghostly Prison. The next card is Fae of Wishes. Probably one of the more obscure things that you can do in Commander is search for cards outside of the game. Fae of Wishes allows you to do that, which it's not the first time we've seen this, but what you get in addition to that search for a non-creature spell out of the game is also a creature that you can cast after that. And if there's a huge advantage to these adventure cards, it's that in terms of card advantage, you kind of get a 2-for-1. If you can cast more spells while keeping your hand size pretty much the same, you're going to have a much easier time playing the game. And if you absolutely need to, you can always just bounce Fae of Wishes back to your hand at the cost of a couple mana and 2 cards in your hand, but when you can just reuse that adventure, I think it's worth it in Commander where you could search up for a wide variety of non-creature spells, maybe something crazy like a Time Spiral, who knows. Following that, we have a black card, Revenge of Rabens. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses a life and you gain a life. We've seen this before in black where the whole point is to drain your opponent's life. It does allow them to attack, so it's not like Archon of Absolution, but black is more about capitalizing off of your opponents making that mistake at the cost of maybe you taking some damage. The idea here is to offset that life loss with a little bit of life gain. It's not going to be anything like a No Mercy, and it most certainly isn't going to do that much against a Voltron deck. But in the same sense as Archon of Absolution, more of the same. This is going to be played alongside other cards like No Mercy, a deck that's playing cards like those where the whole idea is to just punish your opponents for trying to attack you. Then we have Mad Radder. This is one of my favorite cards in pre-release for Throne of Eldraine because it's such a simple yet weird thing to have. A red card that rewards you for drawing your second card each turn. In Commander, this is much easier. You have Commander options like the Locust God that are already going to get a ton of tokens. Not only is it easier to draw those cards on your turn, but it's just as easy to draw them on your opponent's turns, seeing as we have instant speed cards like Brainstorm. Maybe you're not playing blue, fair enough. We still have Anje Falconwrath who can tap to draw us a card, as well as cards like Temple Bell that no matter what color we're playing, we should be able to draw 2 cards in the same turn pretty easily. The fact that this triggers on each turn is pretty ridiculous. Never underestimate the ability to slowly build up a token army. Then we have Return to Nature. Now this wasn't originally from Throne of Eldraine, this was from War of the Spark, and I feel kind of bad about missing the opportunity to talk about it then, but better later than never because this is a strictly better version of Naturalize. Not only do you have the ability to destroy a target artifact or an enchantment, but you have at 2 mana instant speed, a way to get rid of a card from a graveyard. We haven't always had the best ways of dealing with graveyard decks, and with Hushbringer you have ways of stopping them from getting triggers. Sometimes you need more graveyard hate, and while Bojuka Bog and Tormod's Crypt tend to be among the best ways of getting rid of graveyards, you still need a card like this if you're in green. Instant speed way of getting rid of something from a graveyard means that you can do it in response. Many graveyard recursion spells have targets, so in response to those spells, you can just exile that card. While there's definitely a lot of good removal spells in green, most people looking for a budget option to get rid of artifacts and enchantments, while also having that third option that is a worst case scenario, I think it's a really decent card. Just the versatility on this card makes it worth playing in a lot of budget decks. We have another green card in Beanstalk Giant. Now if we look at Fertile Footsteps, the sorcery, you search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library, which we've seen a bunch of 3 mana green spells that just ramp you up in mana. This isn't anything special, and Kodama's Reach and Cultivate tend to be among the favorites, because not only do they get you that land, but they get you a land drop for your following turn. This, however, I think is worth it because you have Adventure. So you're keeping that card advantage, because in your back pocket you have a Beanstalk Giant that you can cast. Beanstalk Giant's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. There's no trample or really anything that's going to threaten a token deck that can just throw out a 1/1 chump blocker, but it's still to have more to your ramp spells than just a 3 mana sorcery, which this does offer you more. And I'm telling you guys, it's a very underrated thing about these adventure cards. It's about keeping your hand size close to the same while throwing out weapons. It's so easy to overextend in Commander, but you just have solid spells here. You have ramp, and you also have a creature that could be pretty big. Getting towards the end here, we have Drown in the Loch. Like I mentioned with Return to Nature, versatility is everything. If you're going for budget options, you want to get the most out of your spells. This is a little bit more situational because it depends on the total number of cards in graveyards. So 2 mana instant speed, you can choose one. You can counter a target spell with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or you could destroy target creature with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. You do have the versatility of countering spells or destroying creatures, but what you have is a card that's going to work out really well in something like Nekosar the Mindraiser. That deck's whole purpose is just wheeling away cards into graveyards, filling them up, making something like this more viable. And Nekosar's not alone, a lot of Dimir colored decks tend to do this. Only being 2 mana, what you have here is a pretty good spell that again has a lot of versatility and should fit into a lot of decks that are looking for some budget options. And then the final card is Improbable Alliance. A 2-mana blue and red enchantment. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. And a 6-mana ability to draw a card and then discard a card. This has the Locust God written all over it, but you are playing blue and red, so you could throw it into pretty much any blue and red deck. Niv Mizzet, again, Nekosar's blue and red. Those decks have no problem getting to their second card each turn. You get rewarded with fairy tokens. This 2-mana enchantment is kind of like Bitter Blossom in the sense that you get that creature presence. Making it your second card each turn is meant to limit it somehow, but in Commander I don't think it's going to be any problem getting to your second card each turn. Throw it into something like a Spellslinger deck. The idea of getting more creature tokens is that you're not going to match up that well with your opponents if they're playing a lot of creatures. Just a really awesome card. I don't think it's going to be a budget option as much as I think it's going to be a good token producer for a lot of decks that are doing some of the same things. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for these 10 underrated Commander cards. Let me know what you think about them. Also, let me know what you think about Throne of Eldraine. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.